But joining us now from Beirut is Max Keiser on the situation in Lebanon. We're starting to see rockets being fired again. We've seen confirmed media reports of Blackwater, now XE, working with the biggest mercenary firm out of South Africa, in North Africa, in Somalia. Max says he has intel on Blackwater training in Israel and planning a strike on Lebanon. Remember, a year before Iceland fell to the bankers, Max predicted it because he had inside sources. He didn't predict it, he knew it. So we have to listen to Max. Max, good to have you here with us.
Alex Jones, welcome to be back. Yes, I'm here in sunny Beirut, Lebanon. And the word on the street is that we're waiting to hear about indictments from the UN relating to the Hariri assassination in 2005, and that Israel is setting up some Blackwater operatives to come in on the back of that announcement and start trouble again in Lebanon. And so Israel not wanting to strike themselves because of the public relations disaster that would pose, they're trying to ferret into the country Blackwater operatives at this time. And so that's kind of the buzz on the street. Everything hinges on this announcement, on these indictments coming down on the Hariri assassination.
Well, can you, I mean, do you have anything that's bona fide, or it's just your sources on the street?
Well, that's the buzz. You know, this is just 2 years ago. There was 80 people got shot down dead in the middle of the 2 blocks from where I'm staying as part of sectarian uprising. You know, Hezbollah is trying to protect the interests of Lebanon, and Israel, of course, and their allies are trying to tear the country apart. So there's always a ready state of alertness, I would say, in the city of Beirut. It's funny because you go down the street right now, everything is calm and quiet, but beneath the surface, it can explode at any second. So it gives this town a unique feeling, a unique buzz.
All right, I want to come back from break and get into why is Max Keiser RT host, Al Jazeera host, BBC host, Genesis Saturday morning radio host. Why are you in Lebanon? Why are you in Beirut? We're going to come back here in a moment, so don't start yet. And then I want to shift gears into just the larger geopolitical area that you're nesting in right now, Max. I want to talk about your view on what's happening in Egypt, what's happening in Tripoli with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, the tanks rolling out to suppress people in the streets in Bahrain and other areas of Saudi Arabia. I want to get your view on all of that. And then Bernie Madoff's jailhouse interview saying the whole government's a Ponzi scheme. Swindler tells New York Magazine, I destroyed our family. We'll be right back. Well, Max Keiser needs no introduction. He's reporting for us live from Beirut, Lebanon. He's also going to be in Egypt the next few days, reporting live here on air with us Thursday. He's a filmmaker, broadcaster, former broker, and options trader. He's known for the invention of virtual specialist technology in the Hollywood Stock Exchange. And he's also known for his very accurate predictions. I remember him 3 years ago, along with many other economists and financial researchers we have on, saying as the dollar devalues, as the world reserve currency, it's going to trigger food riots, and we've been seeing those intensify. That clearly is one of the main ingredients in the political atmosphere, but there's clear evidence that the globalists have decided themselves to trigger it so they can try to control it. Max, why are you in Lebanon? You wanted to go see all this for yourself?
Money in motion. Money is in motion, Alex Jones. You've got revolutions happening all over the region, North Africa, Middle East, and there's billions of dollars moving around. And I'm talking with people, meeting with bankers, meeting with fund managers and high net worth individuals, convincing them to buy silver and gold, but principally silver, as part of the war against J.P. Morgan, to crash J.P. Morgan and buy silver. So I'm talking to people who represent billions and billions of dollars. I'm going to Cairo tomorrow, and you can see the price of silver hit a new 30-year high today. Gold is hovering at a new all-time high today. It's the global insurrection against banker occupation. When I explain to these people in Cairo and in Beirut and across the region that everyone's revolting, the revolutions are all tied to the same guys, the same corrupt bankers. You know, the housing barracks of the world are just puppets for the same Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan scum. So by buying...
So what do you see being behind all this then right now?
J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, the Wall Street banks, are behind all of the puppet regimes because they milk them for all they're worth. So now that this money is in motion, because anytime you've got regime change, as you have, people are moving lots of money. And by the way, you know, I was on your show last 6 months ago when the UBS scandal hit and the Credit Suisse scandal hit about how these banks in Switzerland were caught hiding money and laundering money. I said at the time, 6 months ago, I don't know if you remember this, but I said at the time that a lot of that money was going to go to Tel Aviv. It just came out today in the Financial Times. You can look it up. That, in fact, now Tel Aviv has been mentioned as the primary source where those funds have gone after the UBS bankers advised their clients to get out of Switzerland and to put into Tel Aviv. So Tel Aviv emerged as the new money laundering Switzerland. But anytime you've got regime change like you do now, it's billions are in motion. So I know from my years on Wall Street, that's the sweet spot. That's the best time to go in and pitch people as to where that money should go. So I'm telling people, directing this into precious metals, gold and silver, as a way to overthrow the master regime. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the regime of the regime. This is the way to take it down. And we're seeing, for example, in Italy, another big story that just came out, I don't know if you saw it, but bankers in Italy are now asking the government to go back to a gold standard.
Yes, I did see that. What do you make of last week, the Egyptian government moving to ban people taking gold out of the country?
Well, this is, like I said, there's huge currents, cross currents, and money is in motion. So the people with the most money, of course, they don't respect boundaries much, but they've got incredible buying power.
Well, let me ask you this question. We know that it's these big globalist interests that have used Switzerland, the Caymans, and Luxembourg, other areas as safe havens to hide their money. I've noticed most of the people they've been targeting are folks that have hidden 5, 10, 15, 20 million, which sounds like a lot to you or I or the average Joe, but is chicken feed. So they're really not targeting the people that are hiding billions. But we do see the Israel lobby and others. I've noticed a lot of their senators and House members have been really pushing to go after Switzerland. Is that so they can knock them out as the main money laundering slash tax haven and make Israel the new tax haven? I mean, is that just basically Israel trying to knock out their competition?
Well, that's what I said 6 months ago.
Yeah.
That the U.S. And Israel wanted that business. They didn't want it.
No, you said that. You even wrote about it. You said that, yeah. You're on record, Max.
Why give it away to Switzerland when the U.S. and Israel can take that business? And that's exactly what they did, and that's what they're doing. And now it's come out in the press. Today, there was a first story I saw on mainstream press that said, yeah, the UBS bankers are now going for another round of investigation because it's come out that they directed the clients, when they were under investigation, to go and open accounts in Israel and other places. But look at this story that just came out today, Alex. Financial Times, quote, from the Pentagon, financial terrorism suspected in the 2008 economic crash. Now, on your show, I refer to the 2008 crash as a direct result of financial terrorism.
Well, let me stop you. Again, we're not tooting our horn here. We're calling it exactly like it is. In Obama deception and Fall of the Republic, which you're in, we all call it financial terrorism. We broke here first when we got the congressman on from California, Brad Sherman. He came on the show. Then later, Senator Inhofe confirmed. And that's what I was arguing with this big banker on the airplane about when I flew to New York this weekend. He was saying, well, Paulson meant we would have martial law if things collapsed. No, they went to the House and Senate in closed-door meetings, Paulson, Bernanke, and others, and said, we will have total implosion. We will have martial law if you don't do this. And then when Congress was getting 1,000 to 1 phone calls, and that's what Barbara Boxer reported, or was it Feinstein, 1,000 to 1 phone calls against the banker bailout takeover. It was on record that the head of the Treasury, the head of the private Fed, they all went out and said it's over, depression, and destroyed confidence themselves and engaged in financial terrorism. Then last year, you called it, that 1,000-point drop in a day was a shot across the bow. And now the Pentagon's saying, oh my gosh, that was financial terrorism, but they're going to claim that the Easter Bunny did it.
Well, they're claiming it came from the Mideast, Islamic states, or the Chinese military. It says right here in this story, sufficient justification to question whether outside forces triggered the 2008 using financial terrorism coming from the Middle East states, Islamic terrorists, or Chinese military.
Well, the same thing 6 months ago with Stuxnet. Israel and the U.S. bragged that they jointly developed the Stuxnet, but then I see headlines, government says we must have Cybersecurity Act that takes over the web, the internet kill switch, because of things like Stuxnet when they launched it.
Well, who has the most advanced financial terrorist weapons in the world? It's Wall Street, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, high-frequency trading, algorithmic trading, all of the things that we did cause the crash of 2008, as we talked about on your show, were the result of by crashing the system on purpose. It wasn't something that came out of nowhere. It wasn't economic. It was an act of financial terrorism, and we've seen it since then. Now the Pentagon, in this report, is calling it for what it is, acts of financial terrorism. They mistakenly point the finger to outside forces. They need to point the finger at what's happening internally on Wall Street because that's the source of it.
Max, again, you'll be reporting for us more in the next few days when you get to Egypt. But what do you make of the jailhouse interview that New York Magazine broke over the weekend where Madoff says whole government is a Ponzi scheme, Goldman Sachs is a Ponzi scheme? Well, we don't need Madoff to tell us that. I mean, he is the founder of the NASDAQ, but really what he's done is small fry compared to the 1,500 quadrillion in derivatives created that they've gotten us to basically underwrite with our tax money, with our labor. I mean, Bernie Madoff is talking about the trillion-ton elephant here in the living room.
It's counterfeiting. It goes even... The Ponzi scheme, at the end of the Ponzi scheme, at least it starts off with $1, and then you go through a Ponzi scheme, but there's something at the end of the day that started the Ponzi scheme. But this is actually just rank counterfeiting. U.S. Treasury bonds are being counterfeited. They're being issued with no collateral whatsoever. There's nothing in the piggy bank to justify any of the issuance of these U.S. Treasury bonds.
And now, instead of the Ponzi scheme operator going to prison like Madoff, the bankers hold you hostage at the end of the Ponzi scheme and say, give us everything, and then we'll fix it, but then it always only gets worse. I mean, how many times can they pull off this trick?
Well, I mean, okay, just to, if you want to do a search for a story I'm just looking at here, it's called The Counterfeit Economy. And it just goes into these very details. It's a great story that just came out in the last half an hour. But it just talks about the fact that at the core of this economy, this financial system, you've got what basically are counterfeit operations, counterfeit U.S. Treasury bonds. How long can it go on? Well, if you look at the price, the dollar is moving sharply lower, and precious metals are moving sharply higher. I mean, that's your litmus test. That's your barometer of how long it can go on. Gold keeps going higher because the world is saying, we don't want your counterfeit money anymore. So it's going higher.
Are the banksters approaching their Waterloo?
Well, I think that, as I've said on your show many times before, that the day will come when the announcement is made that the U.S. dollar is devalued by 50 or 60% in one day, and the gold will be a lot higher, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 an ounce, and then, it'll be too late to do anything at that time. But it'll happen in always these types of devaluations. If you look historically, they happen overnight. They don't talk about it for 6 months and decide.
Well, it incrementally happens and then comes to a head.
Then they do it overnight. They do it in one swoop, and this has been the history of it, and that's coming. And because the world is rejecting the dollar, that's why the dollar is hitting new interim lows today. Gold's hitting a new all-time high today. It's happening right now.
What about last week when they had a treasury auction and people didn't buy?
The U.S. government's buying its own treasury. The U.S. government issues bonds, and then the U.S. government buys its own bonds. And also, this rally in the Dow Jones, for example, if you look at the ratio of insiders buying to selling, something like $200 million worth of insiders bought, billions, tens of billions sold in the last quarter. Insiders are getting out of this market. The only thing keeping the Dow Jones up to where the levels are now are the artificial buying by bots and algorithmic trading on the floor of the exchange. Again, acts of financial terrorism. There's no other way to describe it.
Max, stay there, because when we come back, I want to get to the key here, and that is all the propaganda, the preparatory brainwashing I'm seeing is ahead of a Chinese/Al-Qaeda attack on the stock market, blaming the dollar devaluation on the imaginary cavemen. We'll come back.